Michael had dreamed about a night like this since he was a little boy singing into a hairbrush in his bedroom. Now he was standing backstage at Madison Square Garden, holding a real microphone in his slightly shaking hand. Above him, metal lights hummed. Around him, people moved quickly with headsets, clipboards, and cables. Every few seconds someone called out, 2 minutes to showtime, or band ready. For a moment, Michael closed his eyes. He tried to slow his breathing, counting in his head. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. He could feel his heart pounding against his chest. He told himself it was excitement, not fear. Tonight was not just any show. It was a tribute night for Whitney Houston. And the arena was full of people who loved music as much as he did. Every seat was taken. This was the biggest crowd he had ever faced in his life. He peeked through the dark curtain that separated backstage from the bright stage lights. From there, he could see thousands of faces, small and blurry, like dots in a painting. Some people were waving glow sticks. Others were holding up their phones, already recording even though the show had not started yet. A giant screen above the stage showed old clips of Whitney singing, her voice filling the arena through the speakers. As one of her famous notes rang out, the crowd cheered. The sound washed over Michael like a wave. He pulled back from the curtain, his heart beating even faster. Only a year ago, he had been singing at small local bars where half the customers did not even look up from their seats. Sometimes the microphone squeaked, the sound system broke, and the only applause he heard came from his mother, who tried to attend as many shows as she could. Now he was an opening performer at one of the most famous arenas in the world. "Hey, you good?" a voice asked. Michael turned and saw Alana walking toward him. She wore a long, sparkling dress that seemed to catch every bit of light in the room. Even backstage, she carried herself like the stage already belonged to her. People often compared her to Whitney because of her strong, clear voice, and tonight she was the featured singer of the tribute. Michael was honored to be singing a duet with her on one of Whitney's most loved songs. "Yeah, I'm good," Michael said, forcing a small smile. "Just warming up. You know." Alana studied his face for a second, as if she could see past the smile to the nerves underneath. Then she smiled back, warm and steady. "You're going to be great," she said. "You've got a beautiful tone. I heard you at rehearsal. Just stay in the song. Don't think about the people." Easy for her to say, Michael thought. But he appreciated the kind words. He had looked up videos of her performing at other big events. She always seemed calm and powerful, like she was born on a stage. Michael, on the other hand, still felt like the boy with the hairbrush microphone, pretending the posters on his wall were cheering fans. He glanced down at his outfit. A simple dark jacket, a white shirt, and clean sneakers. It was not flashy, but it felt like him. His mother had hugged him before he left the house and said, "You look like a star, baby." He had laughed, but secretly, her words sat in his pocket like a lucky charm, something he could carry with him onto the stage. "Where's your family sitting?" Alana asked, adjusting her in-ear monitor. "In the lower level, somewhere on the left," he said. "Then we better give them a show they'll never forget," she said with a grin. A stagehand rushed over, holding a clipboard. "You're up in 3 minutes," she said. "The band's ready. First verse is you, Michael. Then Alana comes in on the chorus. Same as rehearsal." "Got it?" Michael nodded. His throat felt dry. He took a sip of water, wishing it could wash away his nerves too. He rolled his shoulders, stretched his neck, and hummed a few lines under his breath, feeling his voice wake up. The notes felt a little tight at first, then smoother as he relaxed his jaw and let the sound flow. From the other side of the curtain, the announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special tribute to the one and only Whitney Houston. The crowd roared so loudly that Michael could feel the floor shake under his feet. He swallowed hard. His mind jumped to all the things that could go wrong. What if he forgot the lyrics? What if his voice cracked on the high note? What if he tripped on a cable and fell in front of everybody? Each thought flashed quickly through his mind, like short clips of a movie he did not want to see. He took another breath and tried to replace those pictures with better ones. He pictured his mother's proud face, her eyes shining as she watched him. He pictured his little sister, Sierra, telling her friends at school, "My big brother sang at Madison Square Garden." He thought about all the nights he stayed up late after work, practicing songs over and over until his throat hurt. He thought about the times he almost gave up, when it felt like nobody noticed his efforts. All of it had led to this moment. He did not want fear to steal it from him. Nearby, one of the background singers warmed up, her voice floating easily in the air. The band tested a few notes, a soft drum roll, a quick guitar riff, a deep hum from the bass. Each sound reminded Michael that he was surrounded by professionals who did this all the time. For a second, he wondered if he was the only one who still felt like he was learning how to stand tall on a stage like this. "You belong here," he whispered to himself, so quietly that no one else could hear. "You earned this." Alana heard just enough to catch the last word. "Yes, you did," she said. "Remember, this is not a contest. It's a celebration. We're here to honor Whitney, not to outsing each other." Her words settled on his shoulders like a gentle hand. It was true. This night was bigger than him, bigger than Alana, bigger than any single voice. It was about the songs that had helped people through hard times, the voice that had played at weddings, graduations, and long car rides. He had grown up listening to Whitney with his mom on old CDs. They would tidy the house while singing along, using spoons as pretend microphones. His mom would close her eyes on the high notes, and little Michael would try to copy every sound. Those memories warmed him from the inside. "Places!" someone shouted. "Let's go, let's go!" The lights backstage dimmed. Michael and Alana moved toward the entry point, where a narrow opening in the curtain waited like a doorway to another world. The music director gave them a thumbs up from near the band. A soft blue light spilled across the edge of the stage, and Michael could hear the crowd settling down, ready for the first notes. He could also hear his own breath again, steady and quieter now. He looked at Alana. She nodded. Eyes calm but bright. He nodded back, feeling a small but real sense of courage rising in his chest. As they waited for their cue, Michael thought about how strange life could be. One day, he was singing in a small bar, hoping the bartender turned down the TV so people could hear him. The next day, he was about to walk onto one of the most famous stages in the world, singing a song that millions of people knew by heart. Whatever happens, he told himself silently, I am going to leave my heart on that stage. The band started to play the soft, familiar intro of the song. The first gentle chords floated out into the arena, and a hush fell over the crowd. From where he stood, Michael could see only a bright wall of light and the faint shapes of the first few rows. Somewhere out there, his mother and sister were leaning forward, waiting. The stage hand lifted the edge of the curtain. "You're on," she whispered. Michael tightened his grip on the microphone. His legs felt light, as if he were walking on air. He took one last deep breath, stepped through the curtain, and walked into the glow of the lights, ready to face the biggest night of his life. The lights wrapped around Michael like a warm curtain as he stepped onto the stage. For one breathless moment, he just stood there, blinded by the bright glow from above, hearing the soft murmur of thousands of people waiting. The stage felt huge under his feet, a wide black floor stretching out toward the first rows of the crowd. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Alana glide to her spot, calm and graceful, as if she had done this 100 times before. The first gentle chords of the song floated from the band, The piano sounded rich and clear, like a soft voice speaking first, asking everyone to listen. A quiet hush spread over the arena. The giant screen behind them showed a slow, fading image of Whitney smiling, then shifted to a simple background of soft colors. Michael felt the weight of that image in his chest. This was her song, a song he had heard since childhood, and now he was the one starting it in front of all these people. The microphone felt smooth and solid in his hand as he lifted it to his mouth. He took a steady breath, just like he had practiced, and let the first line come out. His own voice surprised him a little. It sounded strong and clear in the huge speakers, echoing back at him from the distant walls of the arena. He heard himself filling the space, and his heart jumped with a quick burst of joy. The crowd went quiet, listening. He moved through the first verse carefully, like he was walking across a narrow bridge. Each word had to land in the right place. He thought about the meaning of the lyrics, about letting go and saying goodbye, and he tried to sing them as if they were his own thoughts. As the verse went on, his body began to relax. His shoulders dropped. His voice rounded out. He could feel the music sliding under his feet, holding him steady like a gentle river. Somewhere in the lower section, his mother and sister were watching. He imagined his mom's hands folded near her chest, her eyes shining. He imagined little Sierra leaning forward, her chin on the rail, amazed to see her brother standing under all those lights. Even though he couldn't see them in the sea of faces, he sang to them as if they were right in front of him. When the verse ended, there was a tiny pause, just a heartbeat, a breath, a gap between lines. The band softened. Michael turned slightly toward Alana. It was her turn to join. She stepped closer to her mic, her dress catching the light and sending small sparkles across the stage. Then, she began to sing. Her voice flowed out like liquid gold, smooth, full, and bright. The first note alone made some people in the front rows raise their hands to their mouths. It wasn't just loud. It was clear in a way that cut through the air like a bell. She blended her voice with his, weaving around his lines, lifting the melody higher, giving it new color and life. Michael had heard her at rehearsal, of course. He knew she was good. But something about this moment was different. Maybe it was the crowd, the energy, the history of the song, or the way her voice met the room just right. Whatever it was, he felt a warm shiver run across his arms as their voices moved together. They walked through the chorus, both of them singing now. Michael stayed focused on his part, listening carefully so he could match her timing and pitch. When their voices met on the same note, it felt like two beams of light crossing in midair. The crowd responded with a swell of applause that faded quickly as people settled back into listening. The next verse came, and Michael took it on again, now with more confidence. He moved gently from one note to the next, adding small touches, tiny changes in tone to show emotion. A little more softness here, a little more strength there. His nerves hadn't completely gone, but they were no longer in control. The song was. As he sang, he walked slowly across the stage, not too far, just enough to connect to different sides of the arena. He lifted his free hand once or twice, closing his eyes for a beat on a longer note, letting the emotion show on his face. He wasn't acting. He really felt it. The song brought back memories of times when music had carried him through lonely nights and hard days. Near the end of the verse, he turned toward Alana again. Her eyes were closed, her body leaning slightly forward as she swayed to the rhythm. The band began to build. Gently at first, drums getting a little stronger, keys filling out the background, bass adding more depth. The key change was coming. Michael knew exactly where it was. He had circled it on his printed lyrics. The music director had tapped that spot during rehearsal and said, "This is where it goes up. This is where the crowd feels it." The key change would lift the song to a higher place, both in sound and emotion. It was also where singers either shined or struggled. He could feel it coming like a small wave gaining height behind him. The music climbed a step. The notes shifted upward in a smooth jump that made the song feel suddenly brighter, more intense. The crowd reacted with a soft cheer. They knew this part. They had heard it many times before, and they were ready. Alana took in a breath, just a quick, deep pull of air into her lungs, and stepped forward into the light. Then she hit the note. It wasn't just high. It was pure. It rose above the music the way a clear star stands out in the sky. The note carried power, but it did not feel forced. It sounded natural, easy, like the song had been waiting for that exact sound the whole time. It rang through the arena, smooth and bright, holding steady for what felt like a long, shining moment. The crowd exploded. Even though the music was still playing, Michael could hear their reaction. A mix of cheers, shouts, and claps. Some people stood up. Phones shot higher into the air as people tried to record the moment. On the big screen, the cameras caught Alana's face. Eyes closed, brow slightly furrowed in focus, mouth open in that perfect note. Michael was supposed to come in right after. On the very next line, he had a part. He knew the words. He knew the melody. He had practiced it again and again. In his room, in the rehearsal studio, even in the shower. But standing there, hearing that note, feeling the wave of sound and excitement around him, something inside him paused. For a heartbeat, he forgot the next step. He watched her with wide eyes, breath held, as the note finally slid down and the band opened a space for his voice. "This is your line," his mind whispered. "Sing." He lifted the microphone to his lips, but his voice didn't move. It stayed quiet, stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. The words were there, but they floated around in his mind like loose papers in a breeze. "Come on, say it," he told himself. "Just sing." He began to form the first word. But in that same instant, he was suddenly aware of everything at once. The size of the crowd, the history of the song, the power of Alana's voice, the image of Whitney on the screen, his mother and sister sitting somewhere out in the dark. All those pieces rushed together and filled him with a strange, deep feeling, not just nervousness, but awe. He had sung with good singers before, but never like this. Never where a voice beside him soared so high and so beautifully that he almost forgot his own. He felt moved, not in a painful way, but in a way that made his throat tight and his chest full. His lips parted. The microphone waited. Nothing came out. Instead of singing, he simply stood there, silent, the sound of the band and Alana's last echoing note moving around him. He lowered the microphone a few inches, without even meaning to. His eyes shone in the bright stage light, his posture softening as if he had just stepped back from the edge of something big. To the audience, it looked like a tiny slip, a missed moment. Something not quite planned. Some people in the front rows leaned forward, wondering what he would do next. The band kept playing, trusting that someone would catch the next line. Alana turned her head slightly toward him, a question in her eyes, still singing her gentle ad-libs around the melody, trying to cover the gap. In that breathless space, with thousands of people watching and the music hanging open like a doorway, Michael found himself frozen, caught between the notes, his heart louder than his own voice. For a moment that felt much longer than it really was, time on the stage seemed to slow down for Michael. The bright lights, the giant screen behind him, the band, the thousands of people in the seats, all of it faded a little as he stood there with the microphone in his hand and no sound coming out of his mouth. His heart was beating fast. But there was also a strange, clear calm in the middle of his thoughts, like the quiet in the center of a storm. He knew he had missed his line. He knew he was supposed to sing. Yet he did not move. Alana's eyes met his for a split second. There was no anger in them, no blame, just a small question. Are you okay? She kept singing soft ad-libs around the melody, keeping the song alive, giving him one more chance to catch his part if he wanted to. The band did not stop. The drummer kept a steady beat. The piano carried the chords forward. The bass hummed warmly under everything. The audience heard a small gap, but the music smoothed over it and carried on. Inside Michael, something very real was happening. He had never felt this exact feeling before. It was part shock at how beautifully Alana had hit that note, part deep respect, and part realization that this moment was bigger than his own voice. He thought about how many times he had watched old videos of Whitney singing. How many times he had told himself that music was not about showing off, but about touching hearts. Now, here he was, standing in the middle of a living example of that belief. In that short, silent beat, he had a clear choice. He could push his voice out, force his way back into the song, pretend nothing had happened, and try to grab his part of the spotlight again. Or he could do something different, something that felt more honest in this exact moment. He could step back and honor what had just happened, the incredible note, the emotion in the room, the memory of Whitney herself, by letting someone else shine. The decision came to him not like a long argument, but like a simple, quiet answer. He lowered his microphone completely, letting it rest near his side. Then he took one small step back from the center of the stage. His movement was slow and deliberate, not rushed or embarrassed. He turned his body slightly toward Alana and lifted his free hand, palm open, in her direction, as if he were saying without words, "Look at her. Listen to her. This moment belongs to her." The cameras caught it instantly. On the large screen above, people could see Michael standing to the side, his face soft, his eyes shining with emotion. His hand held out toward Alana in a clear gesture of respect. He was still in the light, but the way he stood made it obvious. He was choosing not to fight for the center. At first, the audience did not fully understand what he was doing. Some thought maybe there had been a sound problem. Others thought he was just giving her a small cue. But then they saw how he stayed back, how he did not try to push in again, how he clapped softly with his free hand as Alana continued to sing. He wasn't trying to save himself. He was celebrating her. A soft, surprised sound moved through the crowd, a mix of little gasps and murmurs. People leaned forward in their seats, not wanting to miss a second. They could feel that they were watching something unusual, something that was not written in the script. This was not just a performance anymore. It was a moment of character. Alana seemed to sense this too. When she glanced at Michael and saw the way he had stepped back, something in her posture changed. She stood a little taller, her shoulders relaxing as if she had just been given a gift. She turned slightly toward the audience, her voice growing even stronger, and carried the next lines with full, open emotion. She poured her heart into the words, honoring the song, honoring Whitney, and now, in a way, honoring Michael's choice too. Michael could feel the energy shifting in the room. It was as if a new kind of light had entered the space, one made of respect, kindness, and love for the music itself. He found himself smiling. Not a big, showy smile, but a gentle, grateful one. He knew some people might later say, "He froze," or "He messed up his part." But in his own heart, it did not feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like the truth. In that moment, the best thing he could give the song was his quiet support. He began to clap in rhythm, just loud enough that the cameras caught it but not loud enough to interrupt the music. He clapped for her, for the note, for the song, for everything that had led up to this night. From the front rows, a few people noticed and started clapping too, even though the song was still going on. Normally you didn't clap in the middle of a ballad, but this time it felt right. The sound grew, gentle but real. On the big screen, the picture split for a moment, one side showing Alana singing with full force, the other side showing Michael standing back, applauding her with tears still shining faintly in his eyes. That image alone told a story of courage, not to take the spotlight, but to give it away. Inside his chest, the tight knot that had been sitting there since before the show began started to loosen. The fear that had wrapped around his heart like a heavy rope slipped away, one quiet thread at a time. He no longer worried about what people would think of him. He no longer feared the missed line. Right now, he was exactly who he wanted to be. Someone who loved music more than applause. The band built toward the final chorus. Normally, this was the part where both singers would stand in the middle, side by side, trading lines and then joining together for the big finish. The plan had been clear. They would share the moment. But plans can change when real feelings show up. As the music swelled, Alana moved naturally toward center stage, carried there by the strength of the song. Michael did not follow her this time. He stayed slightly to the side, just a few steps back. Still within the lights, but clearly not in the main focus. Whenever their eyes met, he nodded to her, giving a small smile that said, "You've got this. I'm with you." Unrated. 5 Lee. Broke second. Unrated. The audience felt the difference. They saw that he was not staying away because he was upset. He did not look angry or small. He looked moved. He looked proud. Some people in the seats felt a sudden warmth in their chest, the kind you feel when you witness someone doing something kind without needing a reward. Up in the lower level, where his mother and sister sat, the moment landed even more deeply. His mom pressed a hand over her heart. At first, she had tensed when he missed his line, worried he would feel ashamed. But when she saw what he chose to do instead, tears rose to her eyes. This was her son, the boy who used to give away his toys if he saw another child crying, the young man who always let his sister have the last slice of cake. This was who he really was, shining through, even on the biggest stage. Sierra, his little sister, watched with her mouth slightly open. She didn't understand every detail of the music, but she understood one thing very clearly. Her brother was being kind, even in front of all these people. In her eyes, that was even cooler than hitting any high note. As the final lines of the chorus approached, the sound in the arena grew larger and fuller. The band played with passion. The background singers added gentle harmonies. And Alana gave everything she had. She climbed up to another strong note, not as long as the earlier one, but still powerful and full of feeling. The crowd responded with a rising wave of cheers. Through it all, Michael stayed there, steady as a quiet anchor, singing a few soft harmonies under his breath but not close enough to compete with her. His microphone was near his lips now, but his voice was more like a careful shadow under her light. He knew the cameras might not pick up what he was singing, and that was okay. The point was not to be heard louder. The point was to support. When the song reached its final note, Alana held it with grace, letting it float and then gently fall. The music softened. The drums eased. The keys faded to a soft echo. The last sound lingered in the air like a sigh. For a moment, there was complete silence, as if the whole arena was taking the same deep breath at the same time. Then Madison Square Garden exploded in applause. People stood up, they shouted, they clapped, they whistled, they raised their arms. The noise rolled over the stage like thunder. Some were clapping for the song. Some were clapping for the memory of Whitney. And many were clapping for what they had just seen between these two singers. The power of a voice and the strength of a generous heart. Michael looked at Alana, his face filled with honest admiration. She looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw not pity, not judgment, but deep respect. In that shared look, without a single word spoken, they both knew that something special had happened on that stage, something no rehearsal could ever plan. He had entered the scene thinking the biggest test of the night would be hitting his notes. But in the middle of the song, when the world was watching, the real test had turned out to be something else, choosing who he wanted to be in the face of someone else's greatness. And in that split-second decision, Michael had quietly passed a test that did not need a trophy, a chart position, or a headline to prove it. His reward was simple and pure, the peace in his own heart, and the sound of thousands of hands joining together in one long, joyful cheer. The sound of the applause wrapped around Michael and Alana like a huge, friendly wave. It rolled over the stage, hit the high walls of the arena, and came back again. For a moment, Michael just stood there and let it all sink in. His chest rose and fell as he caught his breath, his heart still beating fast from the song and from everything that had just happened. Alana lowered her microphone slowly. She smiled out at the crowd, her eyes shining in the bright lights. Then she turned and looked at Michael. The applause grew even louder when people saw them look at each other. It was like the audience knew they were witnessing the end of something important, something they would talk about later. Normally, this would be the moment when both singers walked to the center of the stage, side by side, to take a bow together. They would hold hands or lift their arms and let the cameras catch the perfect ending. That was how it went in most shows. But tonight, without anyone planning it, things went a little differently. Michael took a small step forward, then stopped. He looked out at the crowd, the endless sea of faces, the phones in the air, the signs waving. He felt grateful. He felt amazed. But he also felt sure of something deep inside himself. This final moment, this big bow, did not need to be his. He turned toward Alana fully. Instead of walking to stand shoulder to shoulder with her in the middle, Michael took 2 steps to the side. He moved just enough to make it clear that he was not trying to share the center. Then, with a warm smile, he lifted both his hands and gestured toward her, as if he were presenting her to the world. It was such a simple motion, but it said many things at once. It said, "Look at her." It said, "She just did something amazing." It said, "I respect her, and I respect this moment." He didn't speak into the microphone, but his body spoke clearly, and the whole arena heard. The reaction was instant. The crowd roared even louder. The kind of loud that makes your ribs vibrate if you're standing on stage. People jumped to their feet now, if they hadn't already. Some waved their hands. Some clapped above their heads. On the big screen, the camera zoomed in close on Michael's face, showing his open smile and the soft, almost emotional look in his eyes. Then the camera cut to Alana. She looked surprised for a second, like she hadn't expected him to step back that much. Her hand even lifted slightly, as if she were about to motion for him to come join her in the center. But when she saw the honesty in his expression, she paused. She understood what he was doing. He was not stepping away because he felt small. He was stepping away because he was giving her the spotlight. She pressed her hand flat over her heart for a brief moment, a small gesture of thanks that only some people would notice. Then, she turned toward the crowd again and took a slow, graceful bow. The noise in the arena somehow grew even bigger, as if the applause itself was bowing back. Michael clapped for her from his place, just behind and to the side. He wasn't in the dark. The lights still touched him, but the way he stood made it very clear that she was the star of this moment. He bowed too, just a little. Not to steal attention, but to show his gratitude for being allowed to share the stage at all. Up in the stands, people began to talk right away, even as they clapped. Some leaned toward each other and said things like, "Did you see what he did?" And, "That guy just gave her the whole stage." And that's real respect right there. A few fans near the front, who had captured the whole thing on their phones, were already tapping their screens, saving the video, and getting ready to post it. Backstage workers watched from the wings, nodding to themselves. They had seen many shows, many singers, and many moments of ego. They knew how rare it was to see someone willingly step back on such a big night. One of the sound crew members smiled and said quietly to another colleague, "That guy's got heart." The music faded completely now, and the host's voice came back over the speakers, thanking the crowd, thanking the band, and honoring Whitney's memory. While he spoke, Michael and Alana walked off the stage together, side by side, microphones in their hands. Breaths still a little quick. As soon as they passed through the curtain and stepped into the dimmer backstage area, the rush of cool air hit their faces. The sound of the crowd softened into a distant roar, like ocean waves heard from behind a wall. The bright lights of the stage gave way to softer hallway lights, cables on the ground, and people moving around with clipboards and earpieces again. Alana turned to Michael right away. "What you did out there," she said, still catching her breath. "That was something." Michael gave a small, shy laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. I, kind of froze on that line," he admitted. "And then when you hit that note, I don't know. It felt like the moment was yours. It felt right to step back." She shook her head softly. "We were supposed to share it," she said. But there was no anger in her voice, only warmth. "Still, the way you handled it, that was very kind. Not everyone would do that. A lot of people would have tried to push through. Maybe even tried to out-sing me to prove something. You didn't." He shrugged a little, still feeling the adrenaline buzzing in his veins. "It didn't feel like a time to prove anything," he said. "It felt like a time to appreciate it." One of the stage managers came up and gave them both quick, excited nods. "Great job out there, you two," he said. Seriously. That was a moment. The director is already talking about replaying that part in the highlights later. As Michael and Alana walked further down the hall, toward their dressing rooms, other performers and backstage staff smiled and reached out to pat his shoulder or give small nods of respect. Some said, "Nice work, man," or "That was classy," or simply, "Beautiful performance." Every kind word landed softly on Michael's heart. Just a short while ago, he had been afraid of making any mistake at all. Now, the thing that had started as a missed line had become something else, something people were thanking him for. In his dressing room, Michael finally had a moment alone. The noise outside the door was muted. He sat down on a simple folding chair in front of the mirror. His own face looked back at him, slightly shiny with sweat, eyes still bright. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The room was quiet, except for the faint thump of the music coming from the stage where the next act was starting. He could still feel the shape of the microphone in his hand, even though he had set it down on the table. On the counter by the mirror, his phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. He picked it up and saw notification after notification lighting up the screen. Messages from friends, from old classmates, from people he hadn't talked to in years. Social media apps were going crazy. There were already short clips of the performance being posted online. Little videos of Alana's stunning note, and of Michael stepping back, clapping for her, and pointing toward her with both hands. One clip had a caption that read, "When you love the music more than your ego." Another said, "This is how you honor a legend and your fellow artist." Someone else wrote, "He gave her the stage. I respect this." Michael scrolled slowly, feeling a mix of surprise and humility. He had not done it for the cameras. He had not done it to go viral. At the time, he had simply listened to his heart and followed what felt right. But now, he could see how that choice had touched people who were not even in the room with him. There was a message from his mother, too. He opened it and saw a picture she had taken from her seat. The photo was a little blurry, but he could clearly see two tiny figures under the lights. One in the center, one a little off to the side with a pair of raised hands. Under the picture she had written, "I am so proud of you. Not just for singing, and that, but for who you are." His eyes stung softly as he read the words. He smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. That one message meant more to him than any online comment or view count. He looked at himself in the mirror again. This time, he didn't see a man who had failed to sing his line. He saw someone who had kept his heart open in a big, bright moment. Someone who had chosen kindness over competition. And even though his name wasn't the biggest on the poster, even though he wasn't the headline star, he knew he had found a way to make his presence truly count. From the hallway, he heard a knock on the door. "Michael?" It was the show's producer. "There's someone here who wants to talk to you. And, you might want to check your messages later from a few important people." That moment on stage, it didn't just stay in the room. Michael stood up, wiped his hands on his jacket, and took one more look in the mirror. He straightened his shoulders, not in a proud or showy way, but in a quiet, thankful way. Whatever would happen next, he knew one thing for sure. Tonight, Madison Square Garden had seen not only what his voice could do, but what his heart was willing to do too. By the time Michael left Madison Square Garden that night, his body was tired, but his mind was wide awake. The city lights seemed a little brighter as he stepped into the cool night air. Cars moved slowly past the arena, and clusters of people stood outside, still talking about the show. Somewhere in that buzzing crowd, his name was on people's lips, even if he didn't know it yet. He rode home in the back of a simple car, his stage clothes still on, his jacket open, his shirt a little wrinkled from all the hugs and pats on the back. He leaned his head against the window and watched the buildings slide by. His phone kept buzzing every few seconds, lighting up the dark seat beside him. He picked it up a few times, replying to quick messages. "Thank you." And, "I appreciate you watching." But he couldn't keep up with everything. It felt like trying to catch raindrops in his hands. When the car stopped in front of his building, his mother and sister were already waiting at the entrance. His mother had insisted they follow in a separate car with a family friend, but she had texted him non-stop on the way. Now, seeing him in person, she rushed forward and wrapped him in a long, tight hug before he could even say hello. "You were wonderful," she whispered against his shoulder. "I am so proud of you." Sierra jumped up and down beside them, her eyes shining. "You were on that big screen," she said. "Everyone was looking at you and her, and you were so cool and nice," and she ran out of breath and just laughed, throwing her arms around his waist. Michael laughed too, hugging them both. For a moment, there were no cameras, no bright lights, no comments, no clips, just family standing together under the soft yellow light of the entrance. Inside their small living room, things looked exactly the same as always. The worn but comfortable couch, the old coffee table with a tiny scratch on the side, the framed pictures on the wall showing birthdays, holidays, and random moments from years before. It felt almost strange to step from such a huge event straight back into this familiar, ordinary space. But it also felt right. This was home. His mother went to the kitchen to warm up some food she had prepared earlier. Sierra grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. A music channel was already replaying clips from the tribute show. Look, they're talking about it," she shouted. Michael set his phone on the table and joined her on the couch. He watched as the channel showed short parts of different performances from the night. They showed big names, famous faces, and shining costumes. Then, surprisingly quickly, the screen changed to a split view. On one side, Alana hitting that incredible note. On the other, Michael stepping back, lowering his microphone, and pointing toward her with both hands. The host's voice said, "One of the most special moments of the night was this, right here. Watch how Michael James, a rising R&B singer, reacts when his duet partner, the powerful vocalist Alana Rivers, hits that insane note." They replayed it slowly, almost like a sports replay. The note, the crowd's reaction, his pause, his step back, his open hands, his clapping. The host continued. You can see he chooses to celebrate her instead of competing with her. That's grace. That's confidence. And that's love for the music. Sierra looked at her brother like he was a superhero. "You're on TV," she said in a whisper, as if saying it too loudly might break the moment. His mother came back into the room with a plate of food and stopped when she saw the screen. She watched the clip in silence, then looked at her son with soft, full eyes. He shifted a little, feeling shy under both her gaze and the TV's. Part of him wanted to hide under a pillow. Part of him wanted to freeze time and remember this forever. After the show ended, he finally went to his room, sat on the edge of his bed, and opened his social media apps again. What he saw this time made his stomach flip. His follower count had jumped sharply. New messages poured in. Long paragraphs from people who said the moment had moved them. Short notes like, "Respect, you gained a fan tonight, and this is what real artists do." Some people told small stories. How they had felt overlooked in their own lives. How they knew what it was like to stand next to someone who shined brightly, and how his reaction had given them comfort or hope. One message stood out. It read, "I was there tonight. I felt nervous for you when you missed the line, but when you stepped back and clapped for Alana, I felt something in my chest. It reminded me that kindness can be powerful. Thank you for showing that on such a big stage." He read that message twice, maybe 3 times, then pressed the phone to his chest for a second, closing his eyes. This was why he loved music. Not just for the sound, but for the way it connected hearts. Soon, his phone buzzed with a different kind of notification, a direct message from someone whose name he recognized from the music world. He had seen the name in credits, in interviews, in articles about hit songs. "Hey Michael, this is Daniel Cole," the message said. "I was watching from home tonight. That was a beautiful performance. But what really caught my eye was your choice to step back and honor your partner. Anyone who can do that on the biggest stage deserves a serious studio session. Let's talk." Michael stared at the message for a long moment, almost wondering if it was real. Daniel Cole was a well-known producer. The kind of person artists dreamed about working with. He had created songs that played on radios all over the world. "Mom," Michael called softly, still looking at the screen. "Can you come here for a second?" She walked in, drying her hands on a towel. He handed her the phone. She read the message, blinked, and then covered her mouth with her hand. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were mixed with a kind of stunned joy. "See?" she said in a shaky voice. "See what happens when you stay true to who you are?" Michael smiled, his throat feeling tight. "I didn't think anyone important would notice that moment," he admitted. "I was just trying to do the right thing." "Important people always notice the right thing," his mother said softly. "Maybe not right away, but they do." The days that followed felt almost unreal. Clips of the performance spread quickly across the internet. Reaction videos popped up, with people pausing the moment where he stepped back and talking about it in slow detail. Some focused on Alana's amazing note. Others focused on him. One person said, "This is what it looks like when someone is secure enough in their talent that they don't need to steal the spotlight." Another said, "I didn't even know who Michael James was before tonight. Now I want to hear everything he's ever recorded." Interview requests started to appear in his inbox. A popular music blog wrote an article with the title, "The Humble Singer Who Won Hearts at Madison Square Garden." A video host invited him for a short talk about the tribute show. During one interview, the host asked him, "So, be honest, were you scared when you missed your line?" Michael smiled and answered simply, "Yes, for a second. But then I felt something stronger than fear. I felt respect for the song, for Alana, for Whitney. I decided to follow that feeling instead." People loved that answer. Clips of his interview were shared, just like clips of the performance. His follower count kept climbing. But each time he looked at it, he reminded himself what really mattered: staying grounded, staying kind, staying real. A few days later, he walked into a studio he had only ever seen from the outside before. The walls were lined with gold and platinum records, proof of songs that had flown out into the world and settled in people's hearts. Daniel Cole greeted him with a firm handshake and a smile. "I'm glad you came," Daniel said. "Let's see what you can do when you're not sharing the stage with anyone. Let's hear your story." Ah. Loader. In the studio, Michael stood behind the large microphone, headphones over his ears, and sang new songs, songs he had written in quiet rooms, songs about dreams and doubt and hope. His voice felt free. Not because he was trying to prove himself, but because he trusted that being himself was enough. During a break, Daniel said, "You know, there are many singers with strong voices, but not all of them have the heart you showed on that stage. I can work with a good voice. What I really want to work with is a good person." Those words stayed with Michael long after the session ended. Weeks later, life began to find a new normal. He was busier now, with more meetings, more calls, more chances to perform. But he still rode the same trains, still stopped at the same corner store, still came home to the same little living room and the same old couch. One evening, after a long day in the studio, he sat on that couch with his mother and Sierra. They were scrolling through a streaming website, looking for something to watch. A thumbnail popped up in the most viewed section. A video titled, "The Night Humility Stole the Show. Madison Square Garden Tribute." "That's you." Michael laughed. "Can we watch it again?" she asked. He hesitated, feeling that familiar nervous flutter. "Never," she said. His mother smiled. "Play it," she said. "Let's watch it together." So they did. They watched the whole song, the smooth start, his gentle verses, the key change, Alana's incredible note, his pause, his step back, his open hands, the crowd's reaction. They watched the long applause, the bow, the walk-off stage. This time, as Michael watched himself, he didn't cringe or wish he had done something different. He saw a younger version of himself, from just a short time ago, making a brave choice in a bright moment. He felt a quiet pride, not in a loud or boastful way, but in a steady, peaceful way. When the video ended, he leaned back against the couch and let out a long, relaxed breath. "You know," he said softly, half to himself and half to his family, "I didn't hit the highest note that night. Not even close." His mother turned her head and looked at him. "Maybe not," she agreed. "But you made the kind of choice people remember long after the music stops." Sierra nodded eagerly. "People will forget who sang what note," she said in her own simple way. "But they won't forget how you acted." Michael smiled. He looked at the dark TV screen, where his reflection and theirs showed faintly side by side. In that moment, he understood something very clearly. Success was not just about how high he could sing, or how loudly people cheered, or how many followers he had. Real success was about who he became when the lights were on him and when they weren't. It was about the choices he made when the world was watching and when it wasn't. That night at Madison Square Garden had given him more than any headline or studio session. It had shown him the kind of artist and the kind of person he wanted to be for the rest of his life. And as he sat there with his family, safe and warm in their small living room, he felt deeply thankful that when the music had asked him a question on that big stage, his heart had known how to answer.